So today we have with us again the Dean of Education at TCNJ, Suzanne McCotter. She's been lovely enough to join us a few times now for webinars on the education topic. So thank you again. And joining her also again, Dr. Scott Rocco. He's the superintendent of the Hamilton School District. He was also wonderful enough to join us in the spring. So thank you again for being with us as we tackle the tough topic of what the school year will look like going into fall 2020. I don't think anyone promises to have the answers here. I know we did a similar topic a couple weeks ago, and I think our panel offered some wonderful advice and some thought-provoking insight. So I think that's what we aim to do here, and hopefully answer any questions to the best of our panelists' ability. And feel free to submit those questions through the question and answer or the chat, and I will facilitate them as we go forward. But right now I'll turn it over to Suzanne and let our two wonderful panelists take it away.
Thanks, Pam. So as Pam said, I'm Suzanne McCotter. I'm the Dean of the School of Education at TCNJ. And I am so privileged to be joined today by Dr. Scott Rocco, who is the superintendent for the Hamilton School District and a two-time alum of TCNJ. I'm going to gush a little bit, Scott, because he has handled all of these transitions with such grace and intelligence. I have been avidly following him on Twitter throughout this. I've read every single communication he's put out to his school district. It's the hardest job in the world right now to be a school district superintendent in the state of New Jersey. We don't have any magic bullets. We don't have the answers to things. We have a little more clarity than we did a couple of weeks ago about what each superintendent has a little bit more clarity. Each teacher has a little more clarity, but we still don't know what the future brings. And I trust Scott to think carefully, to listen carefully, and to make really good decisions. So there's my gush, Scott. I'm so lucky to call you a treasured colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate that. And the feeling is mutual, not only as an alumni, but we've had the opportunity to work together on some other things, the Superintendent's Association, and now with our teacher leadership program, which is providing great service for our kids. So it's nice to do this workshop and be home at TCNJ. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. And we all hope that you'll come on campus as soon as we're able to be on campus together so you can actually come home.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you to reflect a little bit on your decision-making process and how you've made decisions about reopening for Hamilton School District. I know from talking with you and from reading some of the things you've written that there have been a number of variables that have gone into this. The ones that you've talked about in categories are health and safety, social distance, what's best for students and staff, and consistency. So can you kind of talk us through those factors and what's gone into your thinking about them as you and your district have made decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Yankee fan, so that's the core four, right? So that was a phrase that we used to use with Jeter and Mariano Rivera and Posada. So that's the core four ideas: health and safety. What is the research telling us about health and safety, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with children, dealing with adults? Then the requirement of social distancing, which has a number of breakout areas, which I'll talk about in a minute, that are major factors when it comes to districts deciding about how they are going to manage their planning. And then what is best for students and staff. Here's the bottom line. My last correspondence with the community, I made this comment, and I make it often, is we want to be back. There isn't a person in my district that does not want to be back in the buildings working directly with children. But to do that, we need to determine what is best for not only children, but staff. And there's a lot of discussion that goes on out in the media, in newspapers, that children tend not to get the virus at the same rate that adults do. Some of that is beginning to change as schools open. But what we can't forget is that who do the children interact with in schools? That's the adults. And so if the adults aren't in the school, how do we have the kids in school? So we try to figure out what's best for students and staff, and not only for their health and safety, but also academically, socially, emotionally, and for mental health. And then finally, some form of consistency. And that, that's the hardest of the four, in the sense of all those other factors have to be put in place to be able to actually provide some kind of consistent schedule. So to go back to social distancing, because I said there were some layers there. With social distancing, what superintendents have to do is they have to look at their buildings. They have to see the square footage of classrooms. They have to see the square footage of hallways, of stairwells. How big are they? How small are they? Do some hallways have to be one-way versus two-way? What kind of schedule do you have to develop based on how much square footage you have and abiding by social distancing guidelines? And so that, all of that, those four areas, and then some of the subparts of that really go into making planning decisions, planning implementation. And honestly, it gets revised all the time, because as you model out some of this stuff, you realize that sometimes the numbers aren't as clean as you think the numbers are going to be, right? Math is math. The number's going to come out to what it is. Then go put kids in there, go put a teacher in there, and go make that classroom workable. And so those are the four issues. I want to actually go back to something that you had said when you introduced me, and you said, superintendents have, the hardest job right now. And I would say, yeah, we do have a hard job, but I think everybody who's in education right now, every single person, and that includes parents, because I include parents as part of that educational block, because they have been with us from the beginning. It's a hard job. Everybody. There is no decision that is an easy decision, and there's no decision that's going to make anybody or everybody feel as if they were heard or it met their need. This is just changing by the minute, literally sometimes.
Absolutely. And we know that things have changed a lot. So when we first met to plan this webinar, I know that your plans for Hamilton were one thing, and now they've evolved into something else. So given all of these factors that you're talking about, what do you think Hamilton, what is the plan for Hamilton in September?
Sure. So last Saturday, we had an emergency board meeting, because on Wednesday, the prior week, the governor came out and said, districts that can't meet his checklist of minimum standards could then go into a remote mode until they can meet those standards. So what I want our parents and our communities to understand is a couple of things. One, nobody or no district's plans have changed. We were required to develop plans that hit four categories that the state required, and then three possible scenarios. And those three possible scenarios were fully open, hybrid, and fully remote. So from the perspective of every school district, we've done what they asked us to do in that road back document. The question now is, based on what the governor put out, was how close are you to implementing the hybrid model? And so, as you know, and you see, and everybody sees in the press, as of this morning, there were about 139 districts that have said they're delaying their hybrid implementation and starting remote, and oftentimes starting remote with some of our students who have specialized program still coming in, because those programs can't be easily replicated. So from Hamilton's perspective, we took all those four categories that I talked about a minute ago. We built a plan based on square footage, ability to bring students in, size of building, hallways, multiple floors. Instead of going an A-B model, we went an ABC model, right? So we broke students up into cohorts. We also gave parents an opportunity to pick fully remote. So we've got parents going fully remote, and then we have children on the hybrid doing ABC. However, another thing to keep into consideration is whenever we design the hybrid model, even with parents that are fully remote, they have the option to come back. So we have to build the model at 100%, because we have to make sure that we have classroom space if all of our students want to come back. So we're an ABC model. A is on Tuesdays, B is on Wednesdays, C is on Thursdays, and then Monday, Fridays rotate. And they rotate between A, B, and C. So in a 3-week, full 5-day cycle, we cycle through the system completely ABC on the alternating days. I know that some of our community has said that's a little difficult, and maybe that doesn't provide the consistency that you were talking about. But I'll put it this way. When I was an elementary principal, we operated on a 6-day cycle. And that's how we did our specials: art, music, gym. Kids love all their specials. But on gym days, they had to remember their sneakers. So let's say that was a day 3, which cycled constantly on the calendar. They never forgot their sneakers. They always knew which day was a 3-day. So I do believe that even with that rotation on a Monday, Friday, our students will catch on. And we actually gave them the first 2 months calendar of what that will look like. So that's where we're at right now. To start the year, we're on remote, except for our students that are needing program that can't be easily replicated online.
And how will you make the decision about when to shift, when to pivot from fully remote to the hybrid?
Right. So right now it's based off of the governor's checklist and materials that you need to open. So within our perspective it's PPE. It's some plexiglass or acrylic glass that we're going to be installing in certain areas. We're getting more of that. We're getting more of the gowns, PPE. We're getting additional sprayers that can spray the antiseptic. Other supplies, our signage is still not in yet. It's supposed to be coming in either later this week or next week. And then we've got to put that up. And just, people say, well, just put the signs up. Well, we've got 24 buildings. I think we have 500 to 600 signs coming in. Plus, some of those are signs that have to be put in on the floor for social distancing. So you're not talking about, one building, 20 signs, put some tape on them, put them up. We're also, we still have to put in our thermometer system and some other things. So those are the things that are slowing us down. And everybody that I've talked to as superintendents, we're all ordering from the same supply chains. And so what's happening is some of this material is taking some time to get in. And I'll just take an aside for a second on that, and that's Chromebooks. Our district this year will be 1-to-1. It's a 5-year goal on our strategic plan that we were supposed to be 1-to-1 in September of 2025. We are 1-to-1 this year. And some of our Chromebooks that will be for our seniors will not be in time. So what we've had to do is retrofit some of our laptops to do that. We are waiting on a supply chain on Chromebooks that everybody's ordering from.
And I think we've all read news articles about districts who are really, really struggling because they don't have any of those supplies, both technological and safety supplies yet.
Right.
So I know that you're very connected, and you've mentioned this already, to other superintendents throughout the state. We've got almost 600 districts, and we've all had to go through the same process of determining the model. What are some of the other models you've heard districts talking about?
Yeah, so there's a couple different models out there. A lot of the districts are operating on an AB or an ABC schedule. And so basically all that means is on an AB, you're splitting your students in half and you're determining how often they're coming in. So we're an ABC, we split the students in a third, and when they are in, they're in the full day. Some of my colleagues are doing AB and they're in for a half day. And a lot of times that has to do with the logistics in their buildings. So on a half-day schedule versus a full-day schedule, a half-day, they're often not serving lunch. And that's an issue of space. Where are you serving the lunches? How much space do you have? Can you get the lunches to students? I do know that some of my colleagues are using a system where they're bringing some of the younger kids in to start the year, and then they will phase in the older students throughout the first marking period. So get our kindergartners in, get our first graders in, and start easing them into the school year as best as possible, and then bring our older students in. I have a colleague who had a board meeting, was last night or one of the other nights, and so they're bringing in transition grade students first, and then they will transition everybody else in. So your kindergartners in, your first graders in, your eighth graders in, and your seniors in, and then from there you begin building in students into the system. But most of us are taking some kind of ABC model and then determining if we are doing full day or half day. Many who are doing the AB model are doing 2 days for the A's, 2 days for the B's, and then 1 day fully remote during the week.
So among all the factors you need to think about with that, I'm sure one of them is, how does this impact families and parents who are working, parents who are working from home?
Right.
You have to make sure the kids all go to school. Are you making sure the kids from a family all go to school on the same day? How are you thinking about the concerns of parents and families with this scheduling?
Yeah, and we want our parents to know, we want our community to know, not only in Hamilton, but across the state, that is part of the conversation. The conversation is about how do we make this manageable for families, because we understand the struggle since March. So a couple things that we're talking about, working with our daycare providers to provide those services during the day, making sure that they have the Wi-Fi, training their staff on some of the software that we use so that they can help students, helping our parents. One of the things that we're going to do when we start remotely is a couple times during the first 5 weeks is we're going to do a pop-up schoolhouse. And so throughout the district, we're going to do this pop-up schoolhouse where we go out, and after school, we're going to have tech support. We're going to have administrators. We're going to have teachers. We're going to have service providers. We're going to have our business office there, and we're going to help families, right? Help them with how they operate during the day and what they need from us to be successful. We're also making sure that when we schedule, as you mentioned, trying to get kids on the same cohort, A, B, or C. In the building, if you've got all your children in an elementary school, that's not a hard task. But if you have, like I had a couple of years ago, one in elementary, one in middle school, and one in high school, that's tough. But our principals, our vice principals, they are working on that to make sure that that's possible. There are some chances that that may not work if a child needs a specific program, and that program is only going to be offered on a certain day.
And there was a lot of call. The governor made the decision to leave this in the hands of superintendents to figure out how they're going to meet the benchmarks. There were some calls for the governor to make a decision for the state. What's your feeling about that? Is that something that would have been feasible, or is that just not possible for him to make a decision for the state?
So from the start, going all the way back to February, school districts, the boards of education, their administrators, so their teachers associations, they've been working together. We've all been working together, and we've been making decisions. We've had to make those decisions from back in February. Do we close? Don't we close? Before the governor closed all the buildings, and then how do we manage things? And as I've said, some of it we've gotten right. Other times we've had to make adjustments as we go forward. Right now, based on what the governor put out, his staged progress to return, his limitation on groupings indoors, some things that are not allowed to open, restaurants and things like that that are outside versus inside. I struggle with how this can't be a statewide decision versus a local decision. The transmission rate, again, is over 1%. So those are all things that lead me to believe that this is more of a state issue than an individual school district issue. However, he did say it is a district by district decision, and therefore every superintendent is taking on that responsibility to make that decision in what they think is right at this minute. And we are well aware of the fact that for some of our families, they believe this is the right decision when we say we're going remote. And in other communities, they believe it's the right decision to start hybrid. But at the end of the day, we have to look at where we are, what our planning is, where we are in the process of implementing that planning, and what's happening around our communities. And so we're trying to make those decisions as best as possible. We're educators. We are not community health people. And I want to be clear about that. We're not the people that went to school for community health, medical issues, but we are trying to make the best decision based on the information that we have. I have read way too many studies and articles about virus and transmission and all kinds of other things, but you have to do that to be able to make the right decisions, or the decisions you think are right for your community at this time.
And one of the things the governor has said over and over that I wholeheartedly agree with is that this is going to be a school year that is unlike any other. And we all just need to approach it trusting that we're making good decisions for our children, for our students. And I certainly think everyone I've talked to is thinking first and foremost about what's the best decisions for the people who are there. So we can just be ready to be flexible whenever we need to. So given that, and given that there continues to be some uncertainty, in your case, it'll be remote until it's not remote. So how can parents and families prepare for the first day of school?
Yes. So talking to families about that and us having this conversation now, in full transparency to those that are listening, I'm having these conversations at home with my own children. So I have a senior in high school, and I have an 8th grader in K-12, and then I have a sophomore in college, right? And so we're having these conversations about this is not your usual school year. My kids want to go back. And when we were planning on implementing the hybrid, my children were planning on going back. So as I'm making these plans, I'm considering all 11,750 of our students my kids, right? Because the decision I'm making for my own two is the decision I'm making for everyone in the district, and I hold that as a personal responsibility, right? I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can, but having those conversations with our children, they're different based on how old your child is. Right? So the conversation I'm having with my senior is similar to what I'm having with my 8th grader, but with my senior, it's a little blunter, right? So my senior, he plays baseball, he's got a lot of friends, conversations go around, I'm not sure how much you'll be in school in your senior year. I'm not sure if you'll play baseball again your senior year. Things happen, right? You don't know what it's going to be, but saying it's okay, right? You'll get through that. With some of the younger children, 8th grade through 6th grade to 8th grade, you can have conversations of this is going to be a different year. You're not going to be in school a lot. You need to stay focused. When you are in school, you need to make sure that you're doing everything you can do to interact with your teacher and your classmates, make connections with your teacher, get to know them. With younger children, we have to be very careful, right? And all kids K through 12 can get scared about these conversations. But I think with our younger children, we want to reinforce to them, this is going to be okay. Everybody's going to be okay. You follow the rules, you wear your mask, you ask for help when you need help. If you don't feel comfortable or you are scared, you talk to somebody, right? And so we want to make sure that our students understand that there are people in our district that are here to help them. So conversations between parents and children really have to revolve around what are the things that your child needs to feel comfortable with? And then how do you talk to them about that and make sure that they are comfortable? Go over the routines. Okay, the bus is going to come. When the bus comes, you're going to have your mask on, and you're going to see that the bus driver has a mask on. And when you get off the bus, every adult is going to have a mask on. Now, our kids have been out, lots of kids have been out, and they've seen this in our society as we go. But to get off a school bus at school for the first day and see a dozen of their friends in masks, all of their teachers in masks, they should be prepared for that, right? They're going to have their temperature taken. Tell them that's okay. You get your temperature taken all the time. Everybody's just making sure that it's safe. So reinforcing to children that there are going to be things that are different, but they're all there in place to make sure that everybody is safe and everybody's healthy.
And so you've addressed some of the routines and also some of the social emotional things that we need to be thinking about with children. How about adults? What are the social emotional things you're hearing about from staff and faculty in your schools, and what kinds of social emotional things might parents be going through?
Yeah. So let's talk about the adults, and then I want to come back to the children on social emotional, because that's a really important topic to go a little deeper into. But in the adult realm, we all need to be aware, and we all need to recognize that this pandemic has caused stress on everybody. all of us have had stress. You know, our routines have been disrupted, our jobs have been disrupted, our lives have been disrupted. For a period of time, people didn't leave the house. And so that has an effect on us emotionally. And so it's okay to say, this is bothering me. One of the things that I love about my colleagues, my administrative colleagues, is that we reach out and we check in with each other. And so, you know, last night I got a call at like 10:30 from one of my colleagues who had a meeting, and he's just like, I just got to talk to somebody, right? And so from the adult perspective, we have to make sure that all of us, parents, teachers, secretaries, custodians, we have somebody that we can reach out to and talk to. And from my perspective as a superintendent in a school district, I want to make sure that we are setting up opportunities for our faculty and staff to have resources that they can go to, that they feel comfortable with, so that they can get the help that they need should they need it. With adults, you know, we're looking for people that just sound like they're down, may quickly get frustrated, may quickly get angry, may just have a little bit of what I would call a defeatist attitude. It doesn't matter, right? And we want to work with them, and we want to make sure that they're okay. And I think that's just being a human being, right? It has nothing to do with being an educator, a superintendent, a principal. It just has to do with being a human being, making sure people are okay. From the child's perspective, our children have gone through a lot. Education and being a child is all about interactions. Right? It's all about what I call a people business, interacting face to face, young kids coming into school, being excited about school, and making sure that they're engaged. And so we need to build back that environment for kids. And we have new teacher orientation going on this week for 5 days. I've told our new teachers, I said, I don't care if the first couple of weeks you're behind on your lessons plans because you've made every effort to make a connection with kids, to make sure that the students are okay, to make sure that they feel comfortable and they're excited about seeing you and learning. If you're a little behind on the teaching, but you're connecting with the kids, I'm good, because that's what we want to do in the very beginning, so that when they do come into school, the connection is there and we can build on it, and then the learning will come. And that's a very important thing for us. But we have to make sure that everybody has somebody to talk to as an adult, and that we are keeping our eyes on our students to make sure when we see some of the warning signs, which often manifest themselves in behaviors, or not coming online if it's remote, or not coming to school when it's their day to come to school, that we're reaching out. One of my middle schools, before the pandemic, they used to do home visits. They used to go out to the homes and make sure that kids were okay. And, you know, I don't know if anybody is excited when there's a knock on the door and it's your vice principal or principal, but I tell you what, they've said after they've done it for a while, people appreciate it, they expect it, but it's about relationship building. And so when we're talking also about mental health, both adults and children, we have to work on relationship building and make sure that we're doing the humanistic point of this.
Thanks. So a lot of families and parents are starting to think about if this year is going to be so unpredictable, and if we're really concerned about students being in schools and adults being in schools, maybe we should just try to figure out how to do remote learning well. And we've seen in the media a lot, I've had a lot of parents and families reaching out to me about doing some kind of pods where a group of families will get together and hire somebody or oversee the student learning themselves using the remote tools that the school district is providing. Can you talk a little bit about your perception of this pod model where families are taking on more responsibility for educating their children at home?
So if we, the school district, are doing everything we can, parents who want to go into a pod model should have all the resources available to them from the school district, right? So if their children are going to learn remotely and they're grouping their students for efficiency and to help each other out as parents, they should have the concept of, they should have all of the resources they need to be successful. And districts like Hamilton will help parents, whether it's a technology help, a need or some type of instructional need that can be done. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it creates less anxiety in our communities and within our families if it's possible. If the pod is there just for learning opportunities, then it's perfectly fine. If the concept of the pod is also to limit exposure, we have to also understand that that's a hard thing to do, because once the kids leave the pod, whether it's at a neighbor's house or outside, they're doing other things, right? They're going out into public and those type of things. But the concept of a pod is not a bad idea if families are able to get together and do that. And kids can help kids. That happens in a classroom every day. When a teacher does a lesson and introduces the lesson and then breaks students out into small groups, those groups of students are helping each other, and the teacher is checking in on their progress and to help them. So it's a decent model if it works for families.
One of the concerns that's been raised about pods, and it's a concern that I share, is that it presents some more challenges in terms of equity, that families who have means will be able to hire someone to come in and facilitate the pod, and other families won't be able to do that. And I think we've seen concerns about equity across the board between school districts, among parents whose families who have parents who are essential workers and have to go to work. And so I wonder how you are thinking about equity in the District of Hamilton at this time, and what steps you've taken to try to make sure that everybody gets what they need.
Right. Before the pandemic, equity was a piece of our strategic plan, and it will remain a piece of our strategic plan for the 5 years of the strategic plan. And then my hope is that it's so ingrained in us that it doesn't have to be an objective. It is what we do, right? So equity of instruction, equity of resources, equity of supplies and materials and things like that. On the end of remote learning, it's equity of devices and Wi-Fi. And so I'll get on my soapbox. I've been saying this for months, right? Every child, K through 12, every child, no matter where they live, no matter what their family dynamic is, no matter who they are, they should have a device and Wi-Fi. It should be part of their K-12 experience the whole time. This is part of learning now, right? So who provides that? Well, we're providing the device. It would be great if the internet providers provided free Wi-Fi for school-age children. But what we did is, when we started in our district in March, 83% of our students had a device and Wi-Fi. By the time we were done, we had 99%. And we've worked. Now we're at 100%. We're handing out devices. And if a family does not have Wi-Fi, they're getting a hotspot. So we're making sure that that happens. Now, the other piece of that, and you could say, okay, that's great for equity. Yeah, okay, so they have the device and they have Wi-Fi. The other piece of that equity is making sure they understand how to use it. And so that's where it comes in when we're doing these pop-up schoolhouses. When we go out and we make sure that there's somebody from the tech department helping with that. And the other piece of that is our tech department help center is going to run from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 5 days a week. So making sure that the parents have access to somebody that can help them. That's a piece of the equity that needs to be there. It's not just equitable when you have a device and Wi-Fi, but how they use it, how it's implemented, the support system that's put in place so that they can use it.
Thanks. So we've talked some, and this pop-up schoolhouse, I just love that idea. We've talked some about how teachers and schools are trying to make sure that they're supporting parents and families. How about the opposite? How can parents and families, how can the people on this call be most supportive of their students, teachers, and schools?
Yeah, so really, the old adage, it takes a village to raise a child, has never been more true than now through the epidemic, right? As we've battled to figure these things out, I've said a child is sitting at a kitchen table doing their schoolwork on a Chromebook or a laptop, and sitting right next to them is a parent doing their work on a laptop, right? And so parents are working with us, but I think this is a great opportunity for schools and parents to come closer together. Over the years, it varies. Parents at the elementary level tend to be very involved with their children. As their children get older, they become less involved because kids want less to do with you. They're like, stand back, right? Mom, I'm okay, I'm independent. And that's a nice way that a teenager will say that to through 12. They need us from the time they're 5 years old, stepping in to kindergarten for the first time, to the time they walk in a gown to pick up their diploma at 18 years old. And parents really need to be involved. So one of the things I would ask parents to do is stay involved. Even though your children are getting older, even though they want their independence, yes, let them have their independence. Let them do things. As a parent, sometimes I will say to my children, you got to just do your work. And one of the biggest difficulties in my house every year, and I'm the superintendent of schools, is summer work, right? Every year, we're still working on summer work. It is the 19th of August, and I'm working on it with my 8th grader, right? So parents who are out there, I get it. I live it all the time. But don't walk away as your children get older. Stay involved. Talk to them. Have conversations. And then do the same with teachers, right? Connect with the teachers. Talk about the things that you're seeing at home. Talk about how that is impacting learning. Ask teachers if they're seeing the same thing at school. Don't be surprised if you hear the answer is no, right? A lot of times they're like, no, we don't see that at school. Okay, so what's the issue? Why is there a disconnect? But parents are vital to us in schools. And that's become apparent during the pandemic, but it's always been that way. So reach out to the teachers, reach out to the administration, offer suggestions. I get lots of emails all the time. I do my best, and I respond to almost all of them, if not all of them, as timely as possible. But reach out, offer suggestions, give heads ups, talk to them about what you think could be done better. Let them know when something's been done well. Nothing makes a teacher or a principal feel better than getting that email that's like, hey, listen, I appreciate that. That really worked well. Thank you. And at the same time, if you have a constructive comment, make it. Let us know. We're trying to do the best we can, and we don't want to do it in a silo. We want to get feedback so that we do it right.
And I know that you have been getting a lot of feedback from community members in Hamilton. I'm sure some positive, some constructive, some not so much. But what are some of the common questions or concerns you've heard from residents in your district?
So one of the common questions is, what's a day going to be like for my child? So last year, students and teachers were expected to be on 10 to 2, 4 hours plus a day to address, learning. This year, it's going to model a regular school day. So if we do middle school or high school by periods, your child starts first period at 8:30 in the morning. On hybrid or remote, your child's going to start at 8:30 in the morning. The teacher will do a mini lesson or introducing the concept and giving examples for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then the teacher is going to assign small group, large group, or individual work. During that period of time, the teacher is going to be checking in on students. And then there'll be a wrap up to the lesson. Now, as educators, we know that's a pretty solid concept, right? Introduce the lesson, allow for some free work to practice and master the skill, and then make sure the students understand at the end, right? We've had that common question of what's the day going to be like, because I think some people have misconstrued the mini lesson as 15 minutes of teaching and that's it, the teacher's done. And that's not true. The teacher will be teaching and in contact with our students the whole time of the lesson. So whatever the period of time is, they're working together, right? But the student will not be expected to sit for 40 minutes and watch a teacher lecture for 40 minutes. That's not the way education is anymore. It was when I went to school, right? And think about it. For those of us that went to school that way, that was brutal, right? And then to have to sit there all day long, 40-minute period after 40-minute period. No, this is about interacting with students, making sure they understand the concept, having them explore the concept and demonstrate their ability to master the concept. So they're working that way. So that's question number one. Question number two is, will we have clubs and activities? Will there be athletics? Will there be marching band? Right? And so right now we're in phase one. Most districts are in phase one of implementing athletics. And that basically means that they're just doing conditioning, separated on big fields by themselves, no indoor activity, no locker rooms, all outdoors. Then there's a 2-week grace period where no activity happens, and then they would start their normal practices. We will determine during that grace period if we continue on, and we being every district across the state. Clubs and activities, yes, if we're going to have athletics and we're going to go into schools, yes, we're going to do clubs and activities, because schools are primarily about academics, but they're also about social interactions. They're also about relationships. They're also about connections. And I've often said, sometimes a student will be an outstanding student, not because they like academics, but because they like student council or the band or acting or singing. And if that's what draws a student in to learn and be engaged in school, then we need to provide those opportunities for children. So we are going to do that too. We just need to see where our model is. The hardest of all of them, and it's a question that I get, is about marching band, right? And so there is a spray study, again, something that I really would have never wanted to read about, but there is a spray study about the troubles of instruments where, not string instruments, but instruments that you blow into, and the spray that comes out of them. So we are still working on how to manage that to make sure that our students who are marching band students who play instruments, that those are the things that tie them to the school to give them an opportunity to be able to do that.
And I know that some of the other kinds of activities, the big group activities, had also been put on hold, but you had graduation for your students.
Yes.
This summer. How'd that go?
Wonderful. I got to say, we said from the beginning that we would do everything that we could do to get our students to have something close to a real graduation. And we held true to that. I want to say there were a lot of people behind the scenes that made that work. I had board members that continued to make that work. My senior staff, our principals of our 3 high schools and their vice principals, their class advisors, and we had a number of organizations that donated to make that happen, including, each of our 3 high schools, whether it was their PTAs or their project graduations. We had our PBA and our firemen associations. We had our Shop Hamilton group and our Ed Foundation. And I apologize, but they deserve to be recognized. And I think it was Princeton Bank. So lots of different groups, and I apologize if I forgot any of them, but lots of different groups that came together as a community to provide our graduates with a nice opportunity. And it was on the field where the Thunder play, which was fantastic. The folks at the Thunder did a beautiful job. The field was amazing. It was a very hot day. Our maintenance and custodial crews were there all day long, making sure that that everything was clean and sanitized in between graduations. So I want to give them a lot of credit and thank them for that. And in between, we got to go in behind the stadium in the batting cages and just thank the maintenance guy who threw me batting practice before we started the first graduation. So it was a nice event for everybody.
That's great. And it is, it's everybody's craving getting back to normal and doing things collectively again. So we've got about 15 minutes left. So Pam, are there questions that have come in from participants that we could address?
So, yeah, I'm unmuted, right? Okay, yeah, there have been a couple. I'll start with some, and some of this was surely touched upon, but Scott, if you can elaborate on any of it. Has there been discussion for lower grades about, one, one teacher per grade being 100% virtual teaching and one doing in person. And I think the idea behind that question is it would be difficult for a teacher to be teaching virtually and in person at the same time.
Yeah, so it depends on the number of kids that are actually going to be on full remote. And if there's enough students to be on full remote in a grade, one teacher will be assigned that, and the other teacher will teach live. If not, there'll be a little bit of a hybrid.
It's probably particularly difficult for singleton subjects. You know, if you've got one physics teacher, it's hard for that person to be split.
Yes.
All right, and I don't know. I mean, this will have to be a personal decision, and everyone will handle this differently. But someone asked how to adjust each time a new plan is rolled out. So this person just found out last night at midnight that the district changed the schedule was amended yet again. So any advice on rolling with all of the changes?
We're still trying to figure out to roll with all the changes, because the changes happen all the time. I know the governor's on at 1 o'clock, and I've asked my colleagues to text me if there's anything revolving around schools that will change something. I think the key to that is talking to your children and letting them know that things adjust all the time, that it's okay if they adjust. You know, there is a plan in place. It's just a matter of which plan will be put in at what time. But yes, kids like continuity, they like consistency, and this is not necessarily a consistent thing right now. So that has been a challenge. But talking to your kids about these are changes that are going to happen over the course of, you know, the next couple of months or the whole school year.
Yeah, and I would echo that. And you know, my kids are both in their 20s, but one of them, I still need to kind of say 15 minutes before we're leaving that it's almost time to leave so he can get ready for it. But it's, you know, their kids are different and we need to do that. And it's true for us as adults too. Our plan for the fall has changed a number of times. And it really helps to trust that the people who are making decisions are really trying to make good decisions. They're not doing this on a whim.
Yeah, and Suzanne, just to kind of add to that, you know, I went to TCNJ for undergraduate and graduate, where I got my principal certificate, went through all the training. This isn't in any of the classes, right? You know, but it's not in anybody's classes. And so we've learned along the way. And honestly, it's been a lot, and all of my colleagues and all of my principals and supervisors and directors, it's been about a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of talking to experts in the field. It's about us getting as much knowledge as quickly as we can to help make those decisions. And I honestly would love to just have a regular school day. I would love it to be a regular August where we're rushing to get the schools open. We're excited because the kids are coming in. We want that. You know, as much as the parents want that, and the students want that, the teachers and the secretaries and the principals and the superintendent, we want that. I want to be out watching happy faces and elementary school kids getting hugs from their teachers and high fives at the high school level. You know, that's what we're looking for. But we'll make our way through this. We'll get through it together.
All right, it looks like, yeah, we have time for a couple more. We have someone ask, when will we know the days our kids will attend? It's a two-part question. And when will students with IEPs, will students with IEPs be in school a solid 2 days a week?
Yeah, so
sounds like this is a specific Hamilton question. So those of you who are listening, this answer may not apply to your district.
So for the parent who's asking that question, the time frame of how things are rolling out came out in my last correspondence. I actually put a little calendar on this day. This will happen by September 1st. Cohorts will be in Power School. If they can be done earlier than September 1st, they will be out there and you will be notified specifically from your building principal. That will also include teacher assignments at the time. So they are moving forward. Again, they are planning 3 openings. They are planning fully open, which we know will not happen, but we have to be prepared to eventually go fully open, and they're preparing for hybrid and remote. So they're making sure that all of those work for our students. So by September 1st. And for the issue of our students with IEPs, will they be in a solid 2 days? I was talking with our director today. We had a meeting yesterday. At the end of today, we're going over it again. And my quick answer on that is yes. That is what I've been told. And phone calls are being made to make sure parents understand what those schedules will look like.
All right, well, thank you. And that may not apply to everyone if that's Hamilton's, but it gives some background as to what, what Hamilton's thinking, as did the rest of this this webinar. So thank you. Our other comment I thought was a question, but it was just a thank you to Scott, and it looks like we're getting a lot of thank yous. So I will echo that and thank both of you for being with us again. I think a lot of people found a lot of this useful and can certainly take this with them in the next few weeks as they head into the school year. So thank you as always.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess, we're all on the same team.
Yep.
We're all on the same team and trying to make things that happen as best as they possibly can in this unpredictable environment.
It is.
Thanks for organizing this too, Pam.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. And as long as, Suzanne, as long as people understand that, we're all working on this together. I know they're not always the decisions you want to hear as a parent, and I've been there myself too as a parent, but we are in this together. We will get through this together. We're in this together. Let's work together, and it'll be okay. We'll be all right. So, and thank you both for having me on. I appreciate it.
We owe you.
We do. Thank you. Thank you both.
You.
Everyone stay safe, and thanks for joining us.